welcome in Carol Ross, Stafford Barnett, Warren Cottle. Good to see you guys.
Good morning.
Because Stafford wasn't here last week, and then I was not here the week before, so now we're all back. We're all back together.
The band of brothers and sisters.
Yeah. We have two sisters.
Sisters.
Brothers and
Brothers
sisters.
and sisters. All right,
I'm
I'm
about to
sorry.
say, which one of them are you changing there?
I'm just a man.
I feel like
Okay.
That sister's
I'm just
always,
a gigolo.
But you're a
everywhere I
fixture
go.
here. You're a fixture here.
Yes. I'll
I'm
be
like
honest.
the wall or
And
the trash can.
A male fixture.
I'm okay with it. My beard is better, looking than yours, Warren. So,
Yes.
it's okay.
We are happy to have everyone in today for a good conversation. We were just flipped on the Today Show and saw an interview with apparently two potential running mates, and that is Chris Coons and Jeff Flake, which is very interesting because
I told you Flaky was in it to win it.
You did. Bernie called this on Monday. I want to play a little clip from 60 Minutes, and then I want you guys to react. This is what Flake said when asked if he could make the decision he did in the Senate Judiciary Committee if he was up for re-election.
Senator Flake, you've announced that you're not running for re-election, and I wonder, could you have done this if you were running?
No, definitely not.
Not a chance. No, because politics has become too sharp, too partisan. There's no value to reaching across the aisle. There's no currency for that anymore. There's no incentive.
All right, so is there no currency for reaching across the aisle? Miss Ross, we'll start with you on this one.
I would say at this point in time, no.
Yeah.
No, but the fact of the matter is he's been talking about running for president. He's hinted at it forever. It's no secret he hates Trump. I mean, that's been way out there. But I will tell you this, if they go for a third-party run, forget about it.
Yeah.
That's not going anywhere.
Do you think the Republicans would ever go for him over Trump?
Are you dreaming?
This is not TV.
Are you
This is
dreaming?
radio. I can't express the face you just made at me.
Absolutely not.
But I'll translate it. It was pretty close to
no.
FU.
I would never even impute that with my eyes.
Oh, okay. Even with your eyes. Okay.
But no. This guy, he's toast, and he knows it, and that's why he's doing this. It's his last 15 minutes, his last gasp at some kind of fame, and the two of them together in the hallway after he went in there. Yeah. This whole thing is, Rob. This is not even good political theater. It's tragic.
Well,
the whole thing is
tragic. It actually seems like it was even better than a hallway because then it even got smaller and then it became
elevator.
in a phone booth. They both got into one of those phone booths on Capitol Hill that aren't used anymore. Stafford, I know. It's a whole
What
new...
are they going to call it? The Brokeback Party?
Whole new situation. Stafford.
Wish we know where you lie.
So there we go. There's your intro for this morning. Is it interesting to you, on a very unrelated question, that Flake looks so much like a Kennedy? Every time I look at him, I'm like, Jeff Flake, that seems like a fake name. Maybe you really are a Kennedy, and we just don't know. He looks like the family, like a Bobby,
Well, I mean, let's think about this. There might be. Never mind.
That Jeff Flake could be a Kennedy kid.
Well,
that's what you were going to say.
There might be a lot of them out there.
Jack got around for sure.
Is the Kennedys like the Genghis Khan of
yeah.
all of us share some
politics.
DNA with the Kennedys at some point?
So what are your thoughts,
the Clintons.
Stafford, on this, on Flake, on the process, on everything?
So the process has been tough to watch. Flake, I commend him for having the intestinal fortitude to request the FBI investigation. There's a couple of things going on here, right? So everybody has said, I believe, well, let me back up. A lot of people have said, I believe Ford, but I also believe Kavanaugh. But if you are going to believe Ford, then you cannot believe Kavanaugh because, one of the questions I was asked is, how sure are you that it was him? And she goes, just as sure as I am sitting here talking to you, that I am talking to you. So Ford or Kavanaugh's got some questionable past, and it's, look, I get that you go to college and you drink and you party, and maybe Yale's one of those places that you can do it, and we've seen some of the invites, even as high school days, that imply that there's going to be a lot of drinking. And sometimes kids do stupid things. That being said, I felt, besides the abuse allegations, which let's be clear here. This is a court of public opinion. It's not a public court. It's not an actual court. So there's no presumption of innocence, right? We're trying to qualify somebody for the highest seat, one of the highest seats in the land for a lifetime. I felt that he did other things, including he perjured himself, which that should disqualify him from being on the Supreme Court. So,
on what point do you think he perjured himself?
So he went out and said that he was asked if he had contacted anybody from Yale about these allegations, or did they have any allegations? And what we ended up finding out was, and what's been turned over to the FBI, he said no. What's been turned over to the FBI is his text messages to the people he was partying with in Yale before that allegation from, is it Hernandez? Or I don't remember her name. Ramirez. Yep. So he was trying to do damage control before that came out, so he obviously perjured himself about that.
So here's the final question, then we'll move on to Warren. Okay, so say he did party. Say he threw the ice. Say he blacked out. All of those things. There's no record of that happening once he was practicing law as a judge and everything else.
Yeah.
If it turns out, because right now I think it's going to end up being he said, she said between Ford and him. Obviously, so whatever leeway that gives you. Even if it wasn't for Ford, all the other stuff, if all the other stuff's true, you blacked out, all that kind of stuff, do you think, in your opinion, does that disqualify him from being a Supreme Court justice?
I don't think that part disqualifies him. I think his demeanor during the questioning and the things I've mentioned do disqualify him. And look, one of the things I'd like to point out is that you're going to have a lot of dummies come around and say this is a big Democrat conspiracy to try to shut this down and keep the seat open. But even if it was, wouldn't you agree this is pretty successful? I think that they are trying to get the right person in there.
A Democrat.
But look, if you look at the last person who was put in, there were no allegations.
Okay.
Nobody threw anything around.
We're talking about Gorsuch, right?
We're talking about Neil Gorsuch, right?
Yep.
And look, when you get guys like Lindsey Graham coming out and saying, "Hey, I'd have voted for Merrick Garland," I think that what you realize that at one point the Senate Judiciary Committee cared for people. They wanted people who seemed like they were going to be nonpartisans.
Yeah.
Let us remember who Gorsuch, real quick, Gorsuch was replacing, and that was Scalia. So there was no battle there. They knew they weren't going to lose anything there. The question was, Kennedy was always seen as the swing vote.
But it wasn't Trump's pick to make. So don't add that part.
Pick to make?
Don't add that part and then throw out the fact that they left the seat open for a year.
What wasn't Trump's pick to make?
The replacing him was not Trump's pick to make. That was Obama's pick to make. Period.
Not according to the Democrats. The Republicans were playing according to the Democrats' rules.
You're not. You're mentioning the Biden rule that was never enforced. They kept the seat open for a year. Okay, so don't ignore Merrick Garland and then say it was Trump and then say it was Trump's pick to make.
Well, of course it was. He was the president.
Warren,
it was not. It was Trump's pick to make. It was Obama's pick to make. Obama was the president when the seat was open.
All right, guys. Whenever they start talking about, especially Joe Biden's comments when the Anita Hill portion was happening, the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill, everything, and he really discounted what the FBI's role could be at that time. You are a walking, talking encyclopedia, but you smell better. What do you think about all of that? I mean, at the end of the day, what the FBI is going to hand over is just going to be what everyone said, and it's going to be up to interpretation again because it's not going to a judge or a jury.
Look, the original question I think had to do with Flaky Boy.
Yeah,
and
you can start with Flake.
You know, Carol said something about that he and Goons, or whatever his name is, are like Brokeback Mountain. Now I just want to tell Carol that my buddy in the other room here, Moon, got in a little.
He got in trouble for that.
Yeah, almost got in trouble.
But he was talking about local people
a few years ago. Anyway, I want to respond that. I am one of the dummies who says that this is a Democrat conspiracy to keep this thing open, hoping that they're going to take over the Congress and the Senate so that they can nominate somebody, or they can impeach people or do whatever. They can run roughshod over America, and I am one of those people who believes that they're trying to do that because the facts are the facts. Now, if this is Obama's pick. That's a far stretch from the imagine.
He was talking about.
I know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
That but Obama nominated him. He nominated him, and it did not get heard. It did not go through. That the Senate has their advice and consent rule. They did not do it in that particular interest. Obama was no longer the president as of January the 20th, 2017. And so at that point, then it became Trump's time to appoint a justice whenever there was a vacancy. And if I remember correctly, I do believe that this vacancy occurred this year, and so, it's Trump's pick. But this whole thing, it stinks because that the group up there now making all these allegations and carrying on the way they're carrying on, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're doing character assassination. My God, I hope that the whole thing, people just get totally fed up with it, because you take somebody that goes, anybody now that gets nominated for any of this stuff, it's just going to go through this horrible gauntlet. Were you a guard at the Nazis?
Yeah, so that actually kind of brings me to my next point, and I want to go back to you, Carol. Bernie and I have been asking this question all the way since 2016. Since 2015, when we first started seeing Trump being vetted at a different level. He had no political record, so the only thing you had to go by was a personal record. But do you think this is where we're going politically, where it's going to be rabid trying to uncover things, and not just public things that everyone knows in it and talk about, but yearbooks, but all this, Well,
I would say that on the left, they don't like it. They like to break things when they don't win. If they don't get their way, they'll just break it down. Everything is hunky-dory. They love this country when they're in power, and they can use the levers of power to do whatever they want. When they're not in power, let's just kick over the Lego set and just break it all down, because we're not in power. And if you look at their techniques, going back to Occupy Wall Street, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, it's all about getting in people's faces. It's all about destroying property and really trashing people. There was a great piece that came across from a psychology professor from, I think it was New Mexico, and it's called Ominous Observation. And he said, I'm thinking ahead 20 to 30 years when all these kids have been on Facebook, Google, YouTube, sharing pictures, everything. And who in God's name is going to be confirmable when your whole life is online and you've done some stupid things?
They may never put themselves in a position to be confirmed. They're going to say, not doing it.
Well,
I'm not doing it to my kids. I'm not doing it to my wife.
By every account, Brett Kavanaugh is a brilliant jurist. He may have had some problems with drinking when he was in high school, but what does that have to do with the many years of service he's had, being cleared at the highest level, working in the White House? All
right, we're going to go to the phones, get a couple comments at 232-1542. Good morning. You're on Wingin' It Wednesday. Go ahead.
We started off at the beginning with Kavanaugh being accused of saying something in an email, and when that didn't work, they had to go to something that was even more drastic or more condemning. I'm sorry. We're getting to a point in this country where
wait. Hold on. Are you on speakerphone?
No, I'm not.
We just can't really hear you that well.
You're kind of garbled.
I think I understand what she's saying.
Okay, we're going to go to your point. Thank you.
Thanks. We appreciate it. So I think what she's saying, and we'll go to you, Warren. I think what she's saying is that the other side, the kind of anti-Kavanaugh that said from the beginning, from the day he was nominated, that Schumer was the one who stood out in front of the camera. I mean, the tape is there, that he was going to do anything to fight this. So what she is saying is they've just going topic to topic to topic. Do you contend that that's what's going on? Because we're 3 days into this current Supreme Court session where even if he's confirmed tomorrow, he won't be a part of.
Oh, it's absolutely what is happening. I mean, the facts are facts, and that. But the problem about all of this stuff is about trying to do the character assassination and demify this person and that one, demonize them, I should say. That this. I don't know when it really got started, but it became high technology stuff, guerrilla warfare back during the 80s when, what was his name?
Clarence Thomas.
Lee Atwater. Mm-hmm. Lee Atwater was running George W. Bush's campaign, and they took George H.W. Bush's campaign, they took politics to guerrilla warfare tactics. And anything was game, whatever. And so now both sides do it. You have these consultants out there who practice character assassination. They will get down in the gutter. It's what that Larry Side said, that the last campaign he ran, he said, I told one of the political consultants about my candidate, and he said, I'm going to destroy him. And I said, he's squeaky clean. He said, I don't care. He said, when the dirt comes out, he won't be. He said, well, but there's no dirt on him. He said, then I'll make it up. And he said, that's exactly what the man said, and that's what the guy, he is good at. I mean, and so.
So I'd like to
That's
clarify.
disgusting. That is absolutely disgusting.
But it's what happens. And
I know.
Okay, so what you just presented is called a straw man argument, where we talk about something that's not relative to the subject. We all get disgusted by it.
No, I agree.
I get with what you're saying,
we're talking
but
about the politics side.
I think it's very important to note that the stuff that's been brought to the committee to decide about the next Supreme Court justice, a lot of times it's his own writing. It's testimony from people that knew him. This isn't stuff that people are just going and fabricating. And one of the things that you said kind of really ticked me off. You said they're doing everything that they can. They're going to do it every time, and that's what Democrats do. But the previous justice proves that that's not true. When Neil Gorsuch went in, he went in without a fight. And so, look, I think that Kavanaugh wasn't the number one on the list for the Federalist Society, right? Way at the bottom. There was multiple people in front of him that would have gotten through, that would have sailed through this nomination. Guys who would have been squeaky clean, perfect.
You even had Amy Comey Barrett. No, Comey Barrett.
Coney.
But
Amy
Coney
Coney
Barrett. Yeah,
Barrett.
sorry. But that was someone else. Yeah.
But these were people that would have sailed through, and the left wing conspiracy guys are going. They're pushing for this guy because they feel that he'll side a certain way in regards to presidential powers over, or presidential pardons over state laws.
All right, it's 7:31.
His writings don't show that. His writings are right down the middle, and two of the things that, one of the big things now is his support of the Scalia opinion in Heller, which was about the guns in D.C.
Yep.
Right. So they're afraid of this guy because he is a constitutionalist, and he plays it right down the middle in terms of his judicial temperament, which brings me to. The guy can't win.
Well,
he's on Martha McCallum, and they call him a stick figure. He goes and he defends himself, and he's unhinged.
Well, we're going to continue this conversation after a quick break. Warren, can you want to just give me a little tease?
Yeah, what I want to say is that Stafford says, I said that's what Democrats do, and I think the point I was trying to make is that's what both sides, all sides are doing in this political environment and such stuff as that. And I don't think anybody would have sailed through on this nomination because both sides see that there is so much at stake.
And it's a swing vote. All right, 7:32. Wingin' It Wednesday brought to you each and every week by our friends over at La Bee. We will continue this conversation and more of your phone calls next. All right, so it kind of brings up closer to mind. We saw this happen in local elections, but are we seeing it now on a grander scale? Stafford, the difference in, we kind of talked about negative campaigns, and how those things go and how they sort of move the needle. We have an election coming up in a month and 3 days. And if it should tell you, I'll tell you what it tells me just from working in this and seeing how it's operating, that I am fully convinced by the lack of nastiness that we're seeing in the 3rd District congressional race yet. It seems to be all but one. I mean, do you think it's even going to go to a runoff?
No, the polling data says it is not going to.
So that's why we're not seeing the vitriol, bad ads, everything else.
A lot of people that I talk to are on the ABC, like anybody but Clay, perspective. Mm-hmm. And the problem is there's a lot of choices out there and a lot of qualified choices. Josh Guillory's qualified. Me, Methvin's qualified. There's a guy in Lake Charles, I think Dave Longlinay, is that his name?
But this is a huge district, though. People have to know you across the whole thing.
You're right. And Lafayette typically carries the water for the whole district. If you can win in Lafayette, you can usually win the whole thing. It's disappointing. I think I've said it before. I'm not a fan of Clay. I think that if you don't like people making jokes about Louisiana, don't send a joke to Washington. I think that while I disagree with some of the stuff that he said and some of the stuff that he's done, I will give credit where credit's due. He has done some good things for his constituents on an individual case-by-case basis. I know that there was I think English as a second language teacher who was at risk of getting deported at one of the schools here locally, and he was able to prevent her from being deported. So you got to give credit where credit's due. That being said, I wish we would have anybody but Clay in that position, and somebody who would get it to a runoff and somebody who'd beat him.
Carol, what are you hearing out there on this race?
Well, that's pretty much what I'm hearing, that Clay Higgins is very strong. And he has said from day one he was not going to engage in trashing his opponents. His modus operandi has always been, I honor them, that they're running, that all that sort of stuff, that he would not engage in any dirty politics. He really takes his faith very seriously, and that's part of it. So he will not get into that. He has done more than just a few individual things. I mean, he's worked really hard along with Senator Kennedy on getting the flood insurance program straightened out, which is a mess and has been for a long time, but they're trying to shore it up before it goes under. And he's done a lot of good work on border security, which has been a real priority of the president. That's kind of in his bailiwick, law enforcement and those sorts of things. I think he's been surprising to a lot of people that he has gone to Washington and he's conducted himself with. I think he's done actually a good job, and there's not enough out there, I think, against him. And by the way, Lake Charles is a big part of the district, and they love him in Lake Charles. When I tell you that, I know that.
One of the things I think that's interesting, it keeps coming up. Anytime we start talking about him and you try to find a negative, it comes down to spending. How do you think the spending issue, federal spending deficit issues, will come up in the midterms? Because it was something the president had said when he was campaigning that he would focus on.
It's a mess.
But then you've had these spending bills passed.
It's a mess.
The deficit is still out of control.
Well, this is where both the big spenders, both the Democrats and the Republicans, especially in the Senate, they jam the president every time. They jammed Bush. They jam all presidents. They want their projects in their district, and they don't care how high the deficit goes or the debt goes. And that's where that is, to me, if Trump gets reelected, I believe that will be the thing that he focuses on like a laser, because he's one by one knocking down the goals, the little ducks that he wanted to get it accomplished.
Warren, I want to ask you about money, because we've talked about in past elections that, especially in Louisiana, now it's not true everywhere. You'd think it'd be true everywhere, but especially in Louisiana, you can often look at fundraising and see where the passion is. And Clay in fundraising so far, the most recent reports, he's over $750,000. The closest opponent, I think, is around $112,000. It doesn't almost seem like that money's going to be needed. I mean, I'm not seeing mail-outs yet, and we're less than 5 weeks away.
Well, it's probably not going to be needed. If you go back and talking about negative ads and all that, you go back 2 years ago when he won. He was trashed up one side and down the other by his opposition, and that I think that turned a lot of people off. That is why Scott Angel, who was the anointed candidate, it was his election to lose. I mean, everybody just simply said, "Well, if he's running, he's going to win," and of course he didn't. And and that was one of those things I think where the negative ads and all that backfired on him, and it will again. You know what I'm doing right now? I got a book. I've read little excerpts here and there over the years. F.A. Hayek's Road to Serfdom. Mm-hmm. It's not an easy read. Mm-hmm. It's not easy. And that and then they talk about the economic theories and John Maynard Keynes and then Milton Friedman. But Hayek has had so much of an impact on the way we vision economics and all that. And one of the big arguments was over the years, John Maynard Keynes said national debt doesn't count. He said it means absolutely nothing. And that he said, because when you're pumping money into the system, the money's going. He said that now it will add some inflation, blah blah blah, and all this, that, and other. But I think by and large, people are just oblivious to the national debt. And what we really need to be focused on is what are you getting for that debt? You're getting a completely overblown system to where that now you don't really have federal government, federal employees that are handling the stuff. What you've got are all of these companies, contractors and all of that are all in it to suck as much money out of it as they can. And that is why that area right around Washington, D.C. is the richest area in the world.
It didn't used to be.
Didn't used to be, but it is now. So, where you got federal employees making $100,000 a year, over here on these guys, they're making $1 million a year.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Going to come back and talk about some economic issues here locally. That's when we continue on Wingin' It Wednesday.
The $1 million a year, there's the one.
Oh, look at that picture of me, Bernie. Look, that's what I really look like with my shirt off. Anyways, welcome back to Wingin' It Wednesday.
Sun's out, the guns are out.
Yes, exactly. All right, so last week, and now I remember why I wasn't here. It was because I was over at the Dr. Lauren Scott
Yes, sir.
presentation, the 2019 Outlook. And of course, our area looks very close at what the oil industry is doing. And yes, we've talked about being diverse, but then you drive down Highway 90 and you see how many places are empty. Now there's some activity happening. Trust me, the parish is hoping that gets rolling for the property taxes and everything else, and the sales taxes, all that stuff as well. But one of the things that came up was about the oil industry and low sulfur diesel, because shipping worldwide is moving to a low sulfur diesel requirement for many of these major ports. And what we drill for in the Gulf of Mexico is not low sulfur diesel. However, it could still be good for us. Carol, just your outlook.
Is that what they mean by heavy crude?
And that's the difference. I think that's
Yeah.
but that's
No,
different.
that's completely different.
But just the need for it. If it's scarce, the price goes up, and that's what the good thing is that
Supply and demand.
we've gotten the cost down to the break even point is $30 to $40 a barrel. It used to be. What, Stafford, you might know better than me, 70 or 80, 60 to 70?
It depended on where
Kind of
you're pulling
you
it out
are
of.
oil. Yeah. So anyway, we've gotten to do it. Do you think businesses are going to do it, though? Are they going to come back?
Well, I always take what Lauren Scott says with a slight grain of salt, because he will dance to the tune of the people who brung him. And if they want him to give a positive message, he'll give a positive message. So sometimes it's hard to take what Lauren Scott, and I like the guy, I really do. I think he knows the economy. He really drills down into it and all that kind of stuff. But he can put a spin on it sometimes. And I'm not quite sure that his saying that 2019 and 2020 we're going to be back as strong as he thinks we are, or he gave the impression that, because he's never really specific. It's just the impression that you get. I really have no idea. I worry for our area. We have got to have oil and gas strong again. We really do, in some way, shape, or form. We are trying to diversify, and that was part of the reason why I supported fiber to the home, was the tech sector that it would attract because of having fiber to the home, and I think it has done that. But if that can, I don't think anything can totally replace oil and gas in this area.
As you kind of heard just in that commercial, I'm working on a series of stories about what's happening in Midland. All of our people going there, our equipment going there, what's happening.
Huge amounts of money being made there by people from this area.
Next Thursday and Friday, I will be out because I'll be there talking to a lot of these people, talking to a lot of people from Acadiana who are there. And Warren, I want to kind of go back to something because there are so many different issues. Obviously, the cost, any business.
Cost of drilling in the Gulf.
They can't lose money. That's the purpose of business. And then we also talk about the lawsuit side of things as well. And one of the things that is interesting that I'm finding in talking to these people, because that's usually my second question. Okay, why are you there? Well, we can make so much more money here. It's more guaranteed. It's far less expensive, the fracking process. Okay, question number 2. What about the lawsuits? How does that play into it? And, the most recent person I talked to actually kind of laughed when I asked that question. And he said, Rob, what you have to understand is it's not that it's totally new. It's that when you're making money hand over fist, it's just included as the cost of doing business before. Whenever you're making all the money in the world and you're dealing with these lawsuits on the side, it's small potatoes compared to your profits that you're making. Now, when profits are all but gone, and you're having to do it, that's when it becomes a problem and it comes more. And I thought that was the best explanation of it, because you don't think about that. What is your impression on that side of it being the cost of doing business when you're doing good business?
That's what I've always said, that it all comes down to that one thing, cost of doing business. And there are so many things that goes into that equation that determines the outcome. And that is why that so many companies do not come to Louisiana when there's so many other alternatives out there. I know that somebody said one time that they were talking about these car companies that were looking at Louisiana. I understand that when General Motors was going to do the Saturn plant, that Youngsville, Louisiana was their second choice, and that they did not come here. And that, Mercedes and BMW, I think both went to Alabama. One of them went to South Carolina, and somebody said, when you look at the thing and your workman's comp insurance rates over there are 1/5 of what they are here, your chance of being sued in some of those states are about 1/7 of what it is here. He said, when it comes down to those things, that's why they don't come here. That's part of the reason. It gets on down to the other part that I'm going to bring back in. Everything being equal, when a company is going into a region, everything being equal, they finally come down there. It is, what area do you like best? Do the restaurant play into it? Does this play into it after everything else is being equal? Here's my point. When you come into Lafayette, Louisiana, you drive down the interstate, you drive down the Evangeline Thruway, you drive down Ambassador Caffrey, and you see damn dead dogs laying in the road. Dead dogs laying there with a paw stuck up and the body's all mangled. They've been there for about 4 or 5 days. And what the people in the car are going to say? Oh my God. Is that, and then drive somewhere else. And there you got 3, 4 possums and a couple of raccoons and all that. We got this thing, we're spending all this money on what they call the cultural benefits, awareness or whatever, that they took the money out of drainage. Why don't they use some of that money and pick up the damn dead animals on the side of the road? Because that has more to disgust people about this, I think, than the politics does.
So, Stafford, you might have the most interesting perspective because the business you work for deals with these other companies. You sell to other businesses. What is their thought about all of it?
Well, I think Warren hit a couple important points in that there are costs associated with doing business in Louisiana with insurance, that type of stuff. You've got to dig where there's product, and you got to dig at the easiest place to get that product. And right now, that Midland Odessa system, along with North Dakota, Colorado, and parts of Pennsylvania, and parts of now West Nevada or West Arizona, are part of that system where it's the easiest, where you can get down to a $30 to $40 cost per barrel to extract oil out of the ground, and then they have infrastructure to actually get your product somewhere. That's one of the biggest problems they have in Midland, Odessa right now, is the actual infrastructure to get it out.
Yep.
What we don't have in Louisiana is that play, to get the oil out of the ground as easily. We have it in the northwest section of the state, which is starting to pick up. Our rig count's going up over there. But we got a shell play that runs almost across the whole state under Alexandria at that line, if you look east and west, that they've been trying to figure out how to frack for years, and they haven't been able to get it done. So I think that there's a red herring with the lawsuits to say, this is the reason that they're not doing it, when in reality, our strength has been a hub to deep water. Fouchon, Venice, Cameron. If you look at the central place to be able to get those guys material, it was Broussard, Louisiana, and Houma, Louisiana. And when you run down through those markets, you see a lot of businesses who've been hurt by the lack of investment in the Gulf of Mexico. We're going to continue to see that until it becomes more economical for them to go out and do it. If you can get $70 a barrel for oil and you can do it for $35, that is a hell of a return. The risk reward in deep water is significantly worse. You might go pop a hole in the ground in West Texas. It might cost you $10 to $20 million to get it up and running, right? For a successful one. The Thunder Horse cost more than the space shuttle, and that was just the production platform. All right. So we're talking $4 billion plus to build that one production platform.
I will say a couple of the points of information from the Lauren Scott presentation had to do with the number of cars going to Fouchon. First time it's been up since 2014. It was up in August. Will most likely be up in September as well. The other is the rig count and how much, the final investment decisions, to be made out there is up as well. So we'll just have to see, but it's just like anything else. It took millions and millions of years for that oil to be there. Let's just hope it doesn't take millions and millions more to figure out how to make money for it.
Well, the actual lawsuit environment may not be, as bad as people think it is, but perception is reality for a lot of people, and they don't want to fight it.
That is the key.
They don't want to fight it.
That's the key.
They're gone.
Perception is reality. Guys, thanks so much for your time this morning. Great seeing you. Carol Ross coming up this afternoon, also, 2 o'clock on the Ross Report.
Thank you to Lauren Scott and Maurice and Tiny, those guys at Lobby, for sponsoring the show. So
cool.
I'd love to hear more from them.
All right, good. Would you like to add anything, Warren? Another pause up story or something else?
Yeah, the fact about talking about fracking for oil and gas. South Louisiana Gulf of Mexico has never had fracking simply because our oil is always in sands, and you can't frack sands. And that Stafford mentioned the Thunder Horse being so expensive. You know, the reason it's so expensive is, by God, there's so much damn oil there. But now Thunder Horse also got turned upside down during one of the storms, and so they had to turn around and go out there and completely right the thing and completely rebuild it. I think that was something like a couple of $1 billion in that cost. But you look at some of these others out there that cost in the billions, and they're paying back in the hundreds of billions.
All right. Hey, thanks, guys. Carol Ross, Stafford Barnett, and Warren Cottle. See y'all next week, guys.